Most of us know that fracking can pollute our air and water. But did you also know that it can release radiation and hazardous waste into our communities? Fracking injects toxic liquids into the earth, some of which comes back up, bringing naturally occurring radioactive materials like radium with it. But while some fracking waste samples have been found to contain hazardous and radioactive material, environmental regulators don't classify it that way, hence creating a loophole. Because of this loophole, industry is not required to test the waste for hazardous materials. Workers don't often wear the proper protective gear, risking repeated exposure, risking taking home radioactive contamination to their families. The solid waste from fracking wells is usually transported in vehicles and dumped in municipal landfills. Over time, rainwater and existing moisture that comes into contact with this waste turns into something called leachate, which is sent to wastewater facilities to be cleaned. But radioactive radium dissolves easily in water, and it does not get properly removed. Instead, some of it goes straight into our rivers, which we then use for drinking water, recreation, and farming. Liquid waste from fracking, also known as brine, has been certified in some states to be dumped on roads as a de-icer and dust suppressant, which then seeps into the local environment. Most of us care deeply about our families and our communities. But for too long, fossil fuel CEOs and the politicians who support them have been responsible for polluting our air, poisoning our water, and dumping toxins into our communities, hoping to hide the origins and impact of the crisis that they've created for all of us. The fossil fuel industry should be held accountable for their impacts on the health of our communities and our environment, which means that it must test the waste and properly dispose of waste that is radioactive and hazardous. This is the first step to preventing further hazardous and radioactive waste from being dumped into our communities. It's time to stop companies from dumping under-regulated waste into our waterways and neighborhoods. It's time for the oil and gas industry to follow common sense regulations like other industries. It's time to close the hazardous waste loophole that prioritizes billionaires and corporations over the health of our neighbors, workers, and natural resources.